In the case of Japan, we are currently heavily reliant on fossil fuel, mostly imported. And so where there's a supply shock for the fossil fuel, there's a real risk of massive blackout all over the country of Japan. Peace is one of the most important things that we have to accomplish, and providing energy independence will directly relate to more peaceful society.
Welcome to the World Game Podcast. In this show, we dive into the visionary work of architect and polymath Buckminster Fuller. Fuller's unique approach gave him a rare ability to anticipate the challenges humanity would face. Tune in as we explore one of the most transformative changes humanity has ever gone through. Today, it's such an honor to have Tateiwa Kenji-san, a distinguished nuclear engineer and innovator, to tell us how he is leveraging the Bitcoin network to help build out energy security in Japan. Kenji is currently serving as the CEO of Agile Energy X, a subsidiary of Tokyo Electric Power Company. Tateiwa-san, it's very, very nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on your podcast, Shibuya-san.
So I've listened to several of your interviews now, and you have quite the resume. I feel like I could spend a whole hour going through your resume. Could you briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, so I'm Kenji Tateiwa. I did my bachelor's and master's in nuclear engineering at Kyoto University in Japan, joined the Tokyo Electric Power Company, or TEPCO, in 1996. First, I worked at the Fukushima Daini nuclear power station, and then I worked at the headquarters of TEPCO in the nuclear engineering department, where I was involved in developing next generation nuclear reactors, collaborating with companies like General Electric, Toshiba, and Hitachi. Initially, I was determined to continue my career as a nuclear engineer, but in the early 2000s, there was this big US energy company called Enron that came into the Japanese power market, and I decided I should learn business as well. So I applied for business schools and luckily got into Stanford and got my Stanford MBA in 2004. I was sponsored by TEPCO, so I returned to TEPCO and made an internal career switch within TEPCO from the nuclear division to the international division in 2005. Initially worked at on an Australian coal power project, but I wasn't really interested in coal power plants. My big, hairy, audacious goal was to someday start TEPCO's international nuclear business. But first, I wanted to learn project financing in a more traditional coal power project. But then in 2006, another U.S. energy company called NRG Energy, which is still around, they're one of the largest power producers in the U.S. The CEO of NRG came to TEPCO and asked TEPCO to help NRG's plan to build 2 nuclear reactors in Texas at their existing South Texas nuclear power stations, South Texas project nuclear power station. And NRG chose a Japanese design nuclear reactor called the Advanced Boiling Water Reactor, which TEPCO had co-developed with GE, Toshiba, and Hitachi, and built the world's first advanced boiling water reactors in Japan at TEPCO's nuclear power station. So therefore, NRG wanted to have TEPCO support for their Texas nuclear project. So that was actually my dream project, or dream business. So I asked TEPCO to be part of this Texas project. But the initial answer was no, because TEPCO was a purely Japan domestic nuclear operator. TEPCO was the largest at the time with 17 nuclear reactors, but still purely Japan domestic. It took me 4 years, but I was able to eventually convince the TEPCO management to be part of this Texas nuclear project. And TEPCO signed a deal with NRG to make TEPCO's to be first Japanese utility to invest in an international nuclear project. So I was getting ready to relocate to the U.S. to work on this Texas nuclear nuclear development project. But then the March 11th, 2011, the Great East Japan earthquake happened, and I was in the thick of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster. So I worked on that for the first 6 months, collaborating with international nuclear organizations in mitigating the impact from the nuclear accident. And then I decided I should be in the U.S. to share the lessons learned in English with credible experts in the U.S. So I asked the TEPCO management to help me relocate to be dispatched to the Washington, D.C. office of TEPCO, where I was stationed from end of 2011 until 2015. After returning to Tokyo, I've been working on various other projects, including decommissioning of Fukushima Daiichi, also working with Hitachi for the United Kingdom nuclear new build project. But then the past several years, I've been working on non-nuclear related stuff, being in part of TEPCO Power Grid, which is the transmission and distribution arm of TEPCO, which culminated in my founding Agile Energy X in 2022 with this idea of using Bitcoin mining as one of the most flexible power demand in order to introduce as much variable renewable energy in Japan as possible.
Thank you. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you because you have such a unique experience, resume, and I'm really excited to unpack the work you are doing. It's been something I've been thinking about for a long time, and you're the right person to unpack this with. Before we dive into your work, I want to give a little bit of context for those unfamiliar with the work of Buckminster Fuller. Buckminster Fuller, perhaps most famous for the geodesic dome, or the fullerene molecules you mentioned offline. He has a body of work that has largely gone unexplored. He believed our present accounting system is the root of the energy problems we have today. And this is where it gets interesting and begins to relate to the work that you're doing. He wrote extensively about the importance of energy security for everyone. And interestingly, he also understood a new finite time energy accounting system was necessary to catalyze the build out of energy infrastructure. So with that out of the way, I saw that you once said, what matters the most is the dream of creating a perfect energy world. Maybe this is 10 or 12 years ago. It looked like you were quoted maybe 10 years ago. But I find that really interesting. Can you start by explaining what you mean by that?
Yeah, thanks, Makoto. Actually, it's more than 20 years ago. I wrote that in my essay, application essay for Stanford Business School. So I wrote that essay back in like 2001. So what is it, like 24 years ago?
Wow.
So creating this...
Still relevant today.
Yes, very, very relevant. And I'm still sticking with that career goal. And what I'm being creating a perfect energy world is, put it in other words, another word, it's like a anti-fragile energy infrastructure. And anti-fragile is the term Nassim Taleb. He made up this word in his book Anti-Fragile in 2012. And the concept is anti-fragility. It's something that gains from disorder. The current energy infrastructure in Japan and maybe in other parts of the world as well is quite fragile. In the case of Japan, we are currently heavily reliant on fossil fuel, mostly imported. So where there's a supply shock for the fossil fuel, Japan, there's a real risk of massive blackout all over the country of Japan. And therefore, the government and the country, we have been trying to diversify the energy supply. So nuclear is one, renewable energy is another, in addition to the dominant fossil fuel. So having a diverse energy supply will enable Japan to have a reliable and stable supply of energy. So that's part of the perfect energy world, but not only stable and reliable, but also economically friendly. Economically feasible, low cost, and also environmentally friendly, so green. So that's combining everything together in an ideal way. That's the perfect energy world. And I started a piece to achieve the perfect energy world. The reason I pursued nuclear engineering at Kyoto University is it came from the fact that I lived in LA in the mid 1980s when the smog, the condition was pretty bad. And so I thought we should do something good for the environment. And nuclear power was one of the clean energy sources. And also I liked physics and engineering. So I decided I'll pursue nuclear engineering at Kyoto University and decided to join TEPCO to actually implement what I learned. But I didn't believe that 100% nuclear power was ideal because nuclear absolutely has its pros and cons, including safety issues. But at the same time, all fossil fuel or all variable renewable power is not ideal as well. So therefore, there's got to be an optimal balance of a diverse portfolio. But anyway, that's going back to creating a perfect energy world. And the reason I wrote that in my essay for Stanford Business School is because as I started my career as a nuclear engineer in TEPCO, I also learned that only knowing engineering, I will not be able to achieve this perfect energy world because nuclear power, TEPCO is a for-profit company. Our company has to be profitable. And in order to run our company well, I also had to understand business. And so therefore, combining my engineering background and learning business, it will get me closer to achieving this perfect energy world.
Very interesting. I want to dive into a couple of things there. But before I do, growing up in Japan, I was there until maybe 2004, I want to say, and I don't remember being very conscious of energy security. And I'm curious, did the national energy makeup change after nuclear got decommissioned? Or what are some unique things about Japan and what makes the energy security so important for a country like Japan?
Oh, yeah, good question. So Japan, when electrification started, the first dominant energy source was hydro. Japan has it's a mountainous country, and we built many dams. So it was first primarily hydro, but then Japan ran out of additional capacity, increasing the amount of hydropower because you cannot build too much dams because of some environmental issues, or physically, Japan came to a limit. And then Japan introduced fossil fuel power plants, initially oil, and then coal, and recently gas. And then the 1971 and 2 oil shock hit Japan, and the oil price surged. And Japan came to the understanding that we cannot be too reliant on oil, and there needs to be more nuclear. And U.S. started with the commercialization of nuclear power, and Japan followed the U.S., and Japan started to build a lot of nuclear power. And so around 2004, when you were in Japan, the composition of power production in Japan, I think it was about 25% nuclear, 20% hydro, and the balance primarily thermal power, comprised of mostly gas and some coal. And then Japan, in around 2010, the government made it a mandate or set a target to increase the amount of both renewable power and nuclear so that Japan can shift towards decarbonization. And then the March 11th, 2011 nuclear accident happened. So the nuclear power almost became zero, and you could not quickly increase the amount of renewable. So Japan became heavily reliant on fossil fuel. Japan has
That's
started
almost 25%, huh? Or you said nuclear went down 25%.
That's right. Yeah. So 25% of nuclear went to zero. And then the balance had to initially come from fossil fuel. But gradually, Japan, the government has subsidized renewable. So the renewable power currently comprises about 20%, but the remaining is mostly thermal, which is the largest is gas and some coal remaining.
Well, interesting. Well, you may have just answered this, but Buckminster Fuller also understood the universe is filled with abundant energy, and he was a real advocate for a diverse portfolio of energy resources. And similarly, you're a nuclear engineer by trade, but you're an advocate for a diverse portfolio of energy resources. Can you explain why? I guess it is this energy security, anti-fragility, not knowing future. Are there any other reasons why you're an advocate for it?
Yeah, great question. So first, as you mentioned, Makoto, you cannot predict the future, and there are many uncertainties, and there are many causes of uncertainties, and various energy sources has its pros and cons and different characteristics, and you have to have a diverse portfolio. For example, nuclear has happened 14 years ago. If there's a massive tsunami, there's a risk of accident. But if there's no accident, it's very stable, it's low cost, it's good for a stable supply. So that's the characteristic of nuclear. Put it very simply. Fossil fuel, and there are many types of fossil fuels. Gas, which Japan relies most dominantly, we have to import through liquefied natural gas, and the price is volatile. It's imported. So it's susceptible to international trade. There could be supply shock, which actually happened several years ago when the liquefying gas station overseas had some mechanical issues, and then the supply suddenly stopped. Or the volatility in price due to the war in Ukraine. However, it's very flexible power supply. You can fire it up and fire it down depending on the supply and demand of electricity. So gas is very convenient, but it's volatile. Coal is very stable. It's cheaper compared to gas, but it emits a lot of CO2. So many people don't like coal, but it's got its pros and cons. renewable energy, solar and wind, it's got different characteristics, but solar, it only generates power when it's sunny and only during daytime. Wind, it's more stable than solar, but still it's unpredictable. So anyway, the uncertainty of different uncertainty for different sources of energy, and you don't know what uncertainty will manifest tomorrow or 10 years from now. So therefore, you have to combine a lot of energy sources with different characteristics, with different correlation, so that if one source of uncertainty manifests, we don't have all the power sources shut down all at the same time.
Yeah, that's really interesting you say that, because Buckminster Fuller would say some things like small energy events happen pretty frequently, but larger energy events don't happen as frequently. So he warns that we have this false sense of security with our energy infrastructure because we're designing to things that we haven't experienced yet, but are definitely not outside of the possibility. And he warned that if we got too comfortable with our existing infrastructure and weren't able to adapt it and change, it was potentially terminal or threatening. There could be an event that maybe is unrecoverable.
Yeah,
so that's
right.
interesting you say
yeah,
that.
So yeah, thank you. And related to what you said, Makoto, in Nassim Taleb's book, Black Swan, he describes the turkey.
Yes.
Yeah, the turkey. Yeah, so the turkey is happy. He is fed every day. He or she is fed every day. But then one day before Thanksgiving, he gets killed. But before that happens, it's very stable and he's happy. But you don't see the day before Thanksgiving arriving. Anyway, so even if the current energy infrastructure seems okay, you cannot be sure that tomorrow it'll be safe and stable as well. So we have to be prepared for the black swan events, and black swans, by definition, we cannot predict what would happen tomorrow.
Interesting. It sounds like internal to TEPCO, there was an internal effort to seek new business models. And to our point, we were just talking about that there's this saying that necessity is the mother of invention, right? Or Buckminster Fuller would sometimes say new ideas and behavior emerge from emergencies. And so I'm curious, what foresight or insight did TEPCO have that made them think they might need to reinvent themselves?
Yeah, so
does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. And so let me answer in this way. So after the 2011 Fukushima accident, TEPCO has been putting most of this resource to recover the Fukushima local economy through decommissioning of the damaged reactors, decontaminating the area, and also compensating for the afflicted people. And it's hundreds of billions of dollars that TEPCO will have to repay in the coming decades to come. And TEPCO cannot simply be a usual utility. We cannot simply move forward with doing everyday as usual utility work. We have to come up with a huge new revenue source to be able to serve all of the obligation of TEPCO related to the Fukushima nuclear accident. But there's if someone can come up with hundreds of billions of dollars of extra revenue, that would be fine, but it's obviously very difficult. And so TEPCO has set up an internal training program to ask TEPCO employees to come up with this new ideas. And I volunteered to be part of that program in 2018. There were about 20 of us trying to come up with novel ideas to transform TEPCO's business. But obviously, it's very hard. So I was thinking back in 2018, and that year, two things happened independently. One was curtailment of solar power started in Japan. So after the 2011 accident, nuclear power went from 25% to 0% providing energy in Japan. The Japanese government pushed for renewable energy, and solar especially developments increased rapidly. And by 2018, there was too much solar during the daytime, especially in the spring and fall time when there's not much air conditioning demand. So in the southern part of Japan, in Kyushu, curtailment started during daytime when there was too much solar power and not much demand. So meaning wasted solar energy. So I first heard about it and thought, didn't make sense. Why do we have to waste power when when Japan doesn't have enough power on average? But during a certain period of time, in certain location of Japan, there was wasted energy. So I thought, how can we make this into business? But nobody was able to make it into business because if someone had been able to do so, there would have not been curtailment. But because there was no solution, there was curtailment. So that's one thing that's happened in 2018. Independently, 2018 was when the Bitcoin bubble burst. So 2017, the Bitcoin price went up and then it burst. So 2018 in the Japanese media, and I think it was globally as well, but people were criticizing Bitcoin for being speculative, being a fad or even a scam. And at that time, I was not interested in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency in general, but I heard about the negative publicity of Bitcoin in 2018. And at that time, I first heard about Bitcoin mining, this wasteful power guzzler that's wasting electricity. I just from the mainstream media, I heard it and I thought, well, yeah, that's a bad thing for the society. Bitcoin mining is a bad thing. But at the same time, it clicked to me that, well, maybe this Bitcoin mining thing is a waste of electricity, but at least it consumes electricity, which is a potential customer for utility like TEPCO. And at the same time, there's wasted solar power happening in Japan. And why not use this wasted renewable energy with this power guzzler Bitcoin mining? And TEPCO may be able to set up a new business. So that's when this concept of wasted renewable energy and Bitcoin mining came together, and I proposed this to the TEPCO management, and nobody understood. Everyone thought I was crazy. In the following 4 years, I had to convince the TEPCO management to finally get a green light to set up Agile Energy X.
That's very brave of you, I think, having that conversation. I did hear, didn't they ultimately say this is maybe one of the most innovative plans the company has ever seen? Did I hear that right?
Yeah, so actually the chairman of TEPCO Holdings told me that's the most innovative thing he heard at TEPCO.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting because knowing the culture there, that feels like a big deal for someone to say that to you.
Yes. And also in 2018, I was seconded to a company called Japan Atomic Power Company and working on a UK, United Kingdom nuclear new build project. So my day-to-day job was not Bitcoin mining or proposing new business. I was just doing it as part of the training program. And after the training program ended in 2018, I had to continue proposing this new concept while I was doing nuclear related day-to-day job.
Okay, well, let's dive into that. Let's dive into the fun stuff because that's a super fascinating intersection. Like you said, most people hadn't quite wrapped their heads around. As an architect, I've been optimistic about this thesis that the unique properties of the Bitcoin network can change the energy economics around intermittent energy and batteries, and by so-called overbuilding renewable energy infrastructure or generation. And then one day I read a headline that said TEPCO is experimenting with solar mining in Gunma, and I was like, what could this be about, or who is behind this? And then eventually I came across your name. So I would love to hear, can you speak about your experience at those two locations or whatever you're able to share? It's a very fascinating space that I've been wanting to understand from someone who's actually in it. You know, I can kind of tinker around on my S9 and BitX and solar panel and battery. You seem to be the right person who's experimenting at scale in this space. I would love to hear anything you can share about how those projects are going.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Makoto. So first I have to tell you, we're still not doing it at scale. It's very small scale compared to the global pure play Bitcoin miners. But it's a small step, but a huge leap forward for the country of Japan. What we're doing as ONGX in Gunma Prefecture and Tochigi Prefecture is both very small, only 50 kilowatts in a small container. In Gunma Prefecture, we are using solar power, a 50 kilowatt solar generating station behind the meter. We are consuming all of the 50 kilowatt of solar power with our 50 kilowatt of Bitcoin miners. And we did that because the solar generator, they were struggling with connecting their solar generator to the grid because the grid in the Gunma area is congested. So they told to wait for 2 or 3 years before they could connect the solar generators to the grid. So we were asked if we could purchase their solar power that cannot be connected to the grid. Until they can be connected to the grid, could you use it? And we said, yeah, we can use your unsellable solar power with our Bitcoin miners. So we have been mining Bitcoin with their variable solar power remotely and automatically, adjusting the number of Bitcoin miners that we turn on as the sun goes up and the sun goes down. And when it's cloudy, we switch it off depending on how much power the solar power is generating. So technically, we can do it, and we have demonstrated that we can do it. But at this moment, it's not profitable because the solar generator, the capacity or utilization rate is low, and we're only running Bitcoin miners when the sun is shining and only daytime. And the Bitcoin miners, what we're using is not the state of the art. But anyway, we just did it to demonstrate within Japan, it's technically possible. And in the future, obviously, we have to make it profitable. But anyway, so that's the technical proof of concept that we have been doing since 2023, close to 2 years now. That's Gunma Prefecture. So another project in Tochigi Prefecture.
Just real quick, did they
Yes.
reach out to you? Were the panels already installed and then they reached out to you to see?
No. So
Or
they
no? This was
reached
all
out to us. They had a plan to build the solar generator, but they were told by the grid operator, TEPCO Paragrid, actually our parent company, that they had to wait for 2 or 3 years. But they wanted to build this solar generator for other reasons, and they reached out to us. If the generator, if they were to lay out the PVs, panels, and so forth, could purchase it, and we said yes. So they went forward with constructing the solar panel.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the other project is Tochigi Prefecture, so north of Tokyo in Nasu Shiobara City. And this project is not behind the meter. It's actually front of the meter. So we are connected directly to the distribution line of TEPCO Paragrid, but the area is congested because of a lot of solar generation nearby. And again, this is only technical demonstration that Bitcoin miners can be used as a flexible load to absorb excess power during congested times. And we have teamed up with NEDO, the National Laboratory, in demonstrating that Bitcoin mining can be used as a flexible DER, distributed energy resources. So again, it's technically feasible, but at this moment, it's not profitable because there is still not a regulatory system or a market mechanism in Japan to pay us, company like Agile Energy X, by us providing flexible demand in order to mitigate the grid congestion. There's a lot of social value, and having a flexible DER in congested areas will eventually lower the power price, but there's no market mechanism for us to monetize. So we're not profitable at this moment, but first, our approach was to first demonstrate that this is possible and then ask the government, please set up a market mechanism because it'll be in everyone's interest.
So those are two strategic experiments you're running, one on curtailment and one on basically grid stabilization. Is that right?
That's correct.
Have you experimented with the batteries on the curtailment side at all?
Yes, not yet. So there are many battery companies or companies using batteries to absorb curtailed electricity. And we are not competing with those battery companies. I think Bitcoin miners are complementary to batteries because there are different characteristics and different roles. Batteries are good for charging and discharging, and it will increase the resilience of the grid system. However, batteries cannot indefinitely just charge and consume electricity because there's a capacity. If they are full, they have to discharge. And when batteries are discharging, it's equivalent to generating power from solar or wind. So there's a possibility of kind of exacerbating the grid congestion. So from a grid operator's point of view, they want a pure demand, a flexible demand. So we can complement batteries with Bitcoin miners, which are pure demand.
Right. So in theory, if you co-locate mining and batteries, is there a scenario where your uptime on the miners stays more consistent?
Yes, absolutely. So we have been thinking about it, but it's very difficult at this time because batteries are still expensive and there has to be an optimal mix of curtailed power and how much batteries and how much miners, if we combine it, in which way it will become profitable. Battery companies, the business model is arbitrage through the difference in wholesale power market. When the price is low, they charge it. And then when the price is high, they discharge it. But the volatility in Japan is not sufficient to make that kind of arbitrage business profitable yet. But if in the future the volatility increases, maybe combining Bitcoin miners with batteries and arbitraging, as well as solving the curtailment issue and congestion issue, it could become profitable. But at this moment, even if the combination of batteries and miners, it's very difficult to make it profitable at this moment. But in the future, I think there's a likelihood that it'll become profitable, and so we're thinking about it.
Yeah, no, that's very, very interesting. Can you tell me anything about Hokkaido?
Yes, yeah. So thanks for asking. So Hokkaido, first from a macro point of view, the Japanese government has set a target of carbon neutrality by 2050, and solar generation, it's kind of saturated in Japan. So the majority of additional renewable energy will have to come from wind, and mostly offshore wind, because the land wind farms is kind of getting saturated. And offshore wind, mostly it's from the northern part of Japan, especially in the Hokkaido region as well. And so there's a lot of potential for offshore wind in Hokkaido, but there's not a lot of demand in Hokkaido, the northern island of Japan. And there's a discussion or government plan to build massive transmission lines from Hokkaido to the Tokyo area, but that takes a long time and costs a lot. So the ideal thing is to bring demand to Hokkaido, where there's a lot of potential for renewable energy. But that's a grand scheme thing, and we're also looking at it. But first, from a more microscopic point of view, there's a town called Toyotomi-cho in northern Hokkaido, actually near the northern tip of Hokkaido, town of Toyotomi is. And this town is famous for hot spa. It's the northernmost hot spa in Japan. And so if anyone is interested, I would encourage you to visit Toyotomi-cho. So this town, so they have a lot of hot springs, and also natural gas comes from underground. The hot springs, it's good. The gas is also good, but there's not enough demand for gas in Toyotomi-cho because it's very remote area, not much population, not much industry there. So they are using some of the gas for CGS, combined heat and generation. But they cannot increase the amount of cogeneration of heat and power because there's not enough demand, and also the grid is congested. So what they're doing is discharging a lot of gas to the atmosphere. They don't want to do it, but because there's no demand, so there's no other means to get rid of the gas. And so it's methane from a global warming point.
Flaring methane?
No, they're even
They're
not
just,
flaring because of some safety regulation. They cannot flare, so they're just venting methane to the atmosphere. And they know it's not good for global warming, but there's no other option. So I had heard of Toyotomi town with this gas issue several years ago, but I was busy setting up Agile Energetics. But last year in November, I decided and I called up the city hall, the city office of the town office of Toyotomi, and I told them, like, rather than venting all of the methane, why not generate power with the methane, wasted methane, and we could mine Bitcoin on site. So it'll be local production of generation and local consumption of electricity. The town people working there loved the idea. So I visited there, and the mayor loved our idea. And the mayor has been asking us to come to our town as soon as possible. So we're thinking about setting up first a generator using wasted methane, and then setting up some Bitcoin miners. But first, although the mayor, he didn't know much about Bitcoin, but he's open-minded and he likes to innovate. So he loved our like Agile Energy X concept, not only Bitcoin mining, but combining Bitcoin mining with other things like direct air capture and aquaponics, which we could discuss later. So he likes that crazy creative ideas. So he's been inviting us. But the first step, we are trying to do some kind of small scale demonstration to let the people of the local residents in the Toyotomi town and the local politicians, so that they're okay and actually welcoming our business. So we're planning to do some kind of small scale demonstration and some kind of event in September of this year to demonstrate that we can use the wasted gas, turn it into Bitcoin, as well as other added value, and which will be also good for the local community.
Yeah, that's very, very cool because that would probably also, it's not intermittent that way, right? It's probably pretty consistent.
That's correct. So
Yeah.
actually, the gas generation, it's somewhat intermittent in the sense that it's like Yellowstone, where you get geysers. Sometimes it bursts, sometimes it doesn't. But there's a gas, what do you call it? Gas holder,
Mhm.
like a gas tank, which could equalize the pressure so that in the end, the gas supply is quite stable. Although
Oh,
the source is quite intermittent, the end product, the gas supply is quite stable. So we can use it as a kind of base load gas generation
yeah.
in Toyotomi.
Gosh, that's very, very interesting because it seems like, in theory, if you had time, you could do that tomorrow. The technology to do that seems like it's available. So
That's right. The
it was a
technology
matter of,
is available. And the reason they had not been able to use that is there were no companies or organizations that approached the town to use the wasted gas in that way, because other demand, like such as kind of bringing factory. So there's one yogurt factory in Toyotomi town, but it's not flexible enough to use all of the wasted gas. The yogurt factory will use some
oh,
heat
right. Yeah.
from the gas boilers to sterilize the milk or whatever, but it's not flexible enough. The yogurt factory is not as flexible as Bitcoin miners, and there has not been a Bitcoin mining company approaching Toyotomi Town to make use of this wasted methane gas, and we were the first.
Yeah. And enter Bitcoin mining. Huh? That is fascinating. What about heat? What about heat recovery to then do the onsen or the,
Yes, so that's what we're thinking. And
oh,
the
cool.
good thing about Toyotomi Town and Hokkaido in general, it's northern
Cold.
part of Japan. It's cold, so they have the demand for heat as well. So we can use the waste heat from the Bitcoin miners to
Yeah.
heat the onsen, the hot springs, or melt the snow because it's a snowy area. They have to melt the snow, and so it'll be a good combination.
Very, very cool. I've been there. I biked up through Toyotomi to Wakanai one
Really?
maybe
Okay.
20 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool. Just to tie to Buckminster Fuller's work a little bit, he would say things like there is no such thing as pollution. What we call pollution is just really valuable chemistry that's in the wrong place at the wrong time. And
I see.
what you're doing is really, it's so interesting because it is sort of capturing maybe unwelcome methane at one point, but sort of repurposing it. Gosh, that's so interesting. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
I lost track here because that was such an interesting story. I was not expecting to hear. So culturally, how are people perceiving this idea? Is it a lot of education or resistance, or it sounds like you found the right person who was pretty open minded.
That's right. So, in general, I think still people first, people don't understand Bitcoin. They're not interested. And then Bitcoin mining, almost nobody in general, they understand. But when I approach them, or actually, it's not that I'm doing sales talk. I mostly do almost no marketing. Other stakeholders coming to us and asking if Agile Energy X is interested in coming to Toyotomi town or this town or that town. And so I find out that many people are actually open-minded, like the mayor of Toyotomi. The other example is the mayor of Misato town in Saitama prefecture. He actually, the mayor of Misato town, read an article in Yomiuri Shimbun, which is the largest newspaper in Japan, about a small article about Agile Energy X. It's like more than 2 years ago. And he read the article and called up TEPCO Power Grid, our parent company, and asked the TEPCO Power Grid to ask me to have a meeting with the mayor. So actually, it was the mayor who found us and asked me to have a conversation with him. And we had a talk, and we set up a partnership agreement with Misato Town and Agile Energy X 2 years ago. And we have been doing innovative stuff there. So there are actually many leaders in the local municipalities or other companies who are interested in collaborating with Agile Energy X.
Interesting. Just a bit of a side note, but I grew up in Sapporo, and there's this Toyohira River that goes through, and I'm pretty sure, I think there's a gravity battery, like a hydro gravity battery that goes up Moiwayama. And I did a little bit of research maybe a year or two ago, and it sounded like they're curtailing maybe 20 or 40% of the energy that's generated through there. And I always wondered if anyone's there mining Bitcoin. But I'm curious if anyone's listening, maybe give Kenji a call, because
Yes, yeah,
it seems like an
there's
interesting opportunity, for especially hydro with the consistent source of energy.
that's right. So yeah, if there is curtailed hydro, that'll be ideal because as you mentioned, Makoto, it could be a baseload wasted energy, which will make the economics of Bitcoin mining higher compared to solar, which is like intrinsically low utilization. So hydro, if there's wasted hydro, it'll be great. And I think you're also interested in geothermal. I'm interested in geothermal as well. Japan being a volcanic country, there are many potential for geothermal, but many constraints because most of the heat sources are in national parks and it's very difficult to develop. It takes a long time, costs a lot. But if geothermal becomes available, it could be a stable baseload demand, baseload supply of electricity.
Yeah, especially on Hokkaido where it's cold.
Oh yeah, yes.
There are some beautiful mountains and volcanoes up there. In fact, there's Dishiri Island. Dishiri, I
Yes.
believe,
Yeah,
is
yeah, Dishiri Island, yes.
right by
Near
Toyotomi.
Wakkai.
Do you want to talk about your circular economy a little bit?
Yes, thanks for asking. Yeah, so I came up with this idea. We called it Ultimate Circular Economy, and we actually registered it as a trademark, the name Ultimate Circular Economy. I came up with this idea first because simply mining Bitcoin with wasted renewable energy, it was very difficult to make the business profitable. So I had to come up with the idea to use the waste heat from the Bitcoin miners. So first, using waste heat, the simplest thing is to use it to heat the greenhouse for agricultural purposes. But that's too simple and not very interesting. So first, rather than just simple greenhouse, we will put aquaponics in it, which is like environmentally friendly agriculture that combines vegetables with fish. So the fish waste, it's decomposed by the bacteria, nitrate, and it's fertilized, becomes a natural fertilizer for the vegetables, and the vegetable cleans the water so the fish it's healthy. So anyway, so there's this aquaponics thing that we will put in the greenhouse, which will be heated by the waste heat from the Bitcoin miner. So that's the first connection. And then another use for the waste heat, I came up with this idea to combine it with direct air capture system. So direct air capture, or DAC, it's being used to capture the CO2 from the atmosphere. And it's good because you can reduce the carbon dioxide concentration, but it consumes a lot of energy, especially in the process of adsorbing and desorbing CO2 within this DAC system, especially when dissolving or desorbing CO2 from this adsorbent. You have to heat up the adsorbent. And I came up with this idea, why not use the waste heat from the Bitcoin miner to desorb the CO2 from the direct air capture system. It's not that simple because most of the DAC system, it requires high temperature heat to desorb the CO2. And the Bitcoin miner waste heat, it's only about 60 degrees Celsius at the most. So most of the DAC will not work with a low temperature waste heat from the Bitcoin miner. But I found this certain adsorbent called MOF, Metal Organic Framework, which a Japanese startup company called SyncMoth developed. And they told me that they can desorb the CO2 with their moth at 60 degrees Celsius. So we teamed up with SyncMoth to combine Bitcoin miner with the direct air capture system. And so with this, we can capture CO2 from the atmosphere, which will be carbon negative. And then DAC, once we capture the CO2, usually globally what people are doing is storage, so underground storage of CO2. which is carbon negative, but it doesn't produce direct value other than reducing CO2. So I wanted to make direct use of the CO2 that we capture through direct air capture, and two uses. One is simply supplying the CO2 into the aquaponics system to the vegetables so that it will promote photosynthesis and it will reduce the CO2 and the plants will grow and the aquaponics system will circulate. So that's great. But that's quite simple. So the other thing that I came up with, I thought about what will be the highest value product, which is small mass, easy to transport, easy to store, but high value that could be created from carbon dioxide. And first I thought, well, it's probably diamonds, but creating diamonds from CO2, it's almost impossible. If it was easy, everyone would be creating diamonds, but it's not. It's very difficult. But I found this technology called molten salt electrolysis, where in a melted salt, if you bubble CO2 into melted salt, it dissolves into the melted salt in carbonate ion. And when you electrolyze the molten salt with carbonate ion in, this carbonate ion will split into oxygen gas and solid carbon. So the carbon will come out in one electrode, and mostly it's in the form of graphite. So solid carbon, but graphite, which is fairly valuable because graphite could be used in batteries. And in the case of Japan, all of the graphite is imported. So if we could create domestically graphite from CO2 from Japan, it's quite valuable. But still, it's not the most valuable thing. But then I found out that molten salt electrolysis can create diamonds from the melted CO2. And this research was done by Professor Nohira in Kyoto University, who happened to be my senior at Kyoto University. When I was in Kyoto University, my major was nuclear engineering, but the laboratory which I was in specialized in molten salt electrolysis. So I was doing research in molten salt electrolysis during my time at Kyoto University. And after working in TEPCO, I had absolutely no use of my expertise in molten salt electrolysis before I bumped into this research paper from my senior Professor Nohira, who said he has created diamonds from CO using molten salt electrolysis. It's not big diamond crystal. It's tiny crystallites that you can only see by microscopes, but still he was able to generate diamonds. So I combined this technology. First, wasted renewable energy, mine Bitcoin, waste heat, using it to heat the aquaponic system, also power the direct air capture system, and the CO feeding the vegetables, as well as creating diamonds. And also the aquaponic system, I wanted to make the fish food circular as well. So rather than just feeding fish with like whatever imported fish food, let's start with wasted food. So like garbage, so kitchen garbage. You cannot directly feed the fish with kitchen garbage, absolutely not. But you could use it as a source and have the insect larva decompose the kitchen garbage into compost. And then the larva itself, once it grows up, it becomes fish food. So combining these items all together, all you need is wasted renewable energy, garbage, and air. And you get Bitcoin-friendly vegetables and fish, and you get carbon negativity, and you get diamonds. And this could be done anywhere in Japan or anywhere in the world wherever there's air, garbage, and wasted electricity. So this concept, the mayor of Misato Town, the mayor of Toyotomi Town loved, and they have been asking me to please install this ultimate circular economy in their town.
Wow. That is absolutely fascinating. I was not expecting to hear that, but it reinforces this idea that the incentive system that Bitcoin has created gives people like you, creatives, entrepreneurs, it just changes the incentive system to really solve some of these energy problems or circular economy reuse. People have talked about circular economies for a long time, but sort of hypothetically, it's a switch in incentive systems, right?
Yeah,
Is that
that's
fair to
right.
say? Yeah.
Yeah, it's very fair. And another aspect is there are many sources of wasted renewable energy. And one I haven't discussed today is biogas. So the waste from cows and pigs and chicken, that's a big environmental issue. But you could decompose the waste from those animals and generate methane gas, which is called biogas. In Hokkaido, there are many cows, and the cow waste is a big issue. Biogas, some farmers are doing it, but not many because there's not enough demand for power. Once you generate power from the biogas, you have a lot of source for the methane gas, but there's not enough flexible power demand. So that's where Bitcoin mining can come into play. And we could combine this ultimate circular economy with a biogas system, which will make it even more circular because we will start from feeding the cow with the vegetables growing in the aquaponics system. And then the cow waste will turn into electricity and it will recirculate again using mining Bitcoin, waste heat, aquaponics, direct air capture, and also the food waste using it as source of the fish food. So it'll be even more circular.
Wow. And maybe even heating the roads in Hokkaido. In Hokkaido,
That's right.
they
That's
heat
right.
their roads. Oh, wow, interesting.
And the
Is
good thing
Hokkaido
is,
the new Bitcoin mining capital of the world?
I think that the Hokkaido will be the next Texas for as a Bitcoin hub. Bitcoin.
That's cool. The shape of Hokkaido is very similar to Texas.
Yeah, it's similar.
Well, that's cool. So I guess one last question on that. You mentioned electrolysis. Is hydrogen electrolysis potentially possible through the heat? That seems like a stretch. Have you thought about other forms of...
So water electrolysis to generate hydrogen. So you can use, if you have abundant electricity, you can electrolyze water and split it into oxygen and hydrogen. That's good. It's important. And I'm all for hydrogen economy. But the issue or many issues of hydrogen is it's very difficult to store hydrogen, transport hydrogen, and use hydrogen. And you have to also sell hydrogen, and the value chain is still not there. But Bitcoin mining, as you know, there's no off-taker. You don't need an off-taker. There's zero cost for storage, almost zero cost for transportation. All you need is like Wi-Fi. It would be enough. So it's very different from hydrogen. But generating hydrogen with water electrolysis using wasted renewable energy, that's important. But still not like a business ready for business at this moment.
That's great. So this may be the only conversation I ever get with a nuclear engineer. So I would be remiss not to ask. Buckminster Fuller, like Einstein, understood nuclear conflict was a potential threat or terminal threat to humanity, and he believed energy security for everyone was the best way, if not only way, to avoid that potential violent future. Do you ever think about energy security being an important part of a peaceful world, should I say?
Absolutely. So that's one of the reasons I pursued nuclear engineering. First was the environmental issue, but the other was related to the peaceful society because many wars happen through trying to get energy or natural resources from other countries. If, for example, Japan is energy independent, we don't have to be involved in war, or other countries will not have to fight for energy resources if there's abundant domestic energy sources. So that nuclear is one, renewable is another, but it should not be only one source. It should be diverse sources. So yeah, I absolutely agree. Peace is one of the most important things that we have to accomplish, and providing energy independence will directly relate to more peaceful society.
Yeah, thanks. And then I guess last one, I do want to touch on the educational piece. I think I heard from you, but I also see it in the back. You have the bit axe there, and Bucky often talked about having the tools, but if people don't know about those tools, then it's useless. And so education is a really important piece of sharing what you're learning and the technologies that you are exploring. And it sounds like you found a great way to do that through the bit axe. Can you talk about that a little bit as we wrap up here?
Yes, so I'm really interested in education. So the young generations, they are the future of our society. And just talking about Bitcoin mining, energy things, it's difficult for kids to understand. But so I always walk around with this BitX and this mobile battery and mobile Wi-Fi. And all you need is these three things. And you can demonstrate that, assume this is like wasted renewable energy. stored in a battery. You can like plug it into this BitX. This is actually mining Bitcoin right now, and it's connected to the internet with this Wi-Fi. And I can show the kids with my smartphone that this thing is actually hashing, and the hash is, and this machine is also connected to the mining pool. So you can see real time that electricity is converted into digital value, and then digital value is converted into money real time. And actually there are so Agile Energetics, we have two unofficial ambassadors, and one is an elementary school kid. The other is a junior high kid who was an elementary school kid last year. So they were fascinated with what we're doing with Bitcoin mining, combining with energy and also the ultimate circular economy thing. And these two kids are like a child prodigy. So they're gifted kids. And they are not satisfied with the schoolwork. It's too easy for them. And so they understand, they study by themselves. I don't have to teach them everything. I just show them. So there's this wasted energy. There's this new gadget called the Bitcoin miner, and we'll convert it into digital value. And they are like really excited, and they want to learn more from us. So we're trying to involve more kids. So from an educational point of view, and in the future, make our business, not only our company, but other companies as well, but profitable business to combine Bitcoin mining to solve not only energy issue, but issues with the local communities in Hokkaido and other rural places of Japan, which many municipalities are struggling with aging population and not much industry, not much other business going on. But we can solve that with this using Bitcoin mining as one of the solutions.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think I read in one of your interviews, the aging population also has an implication on domestic energy generation, which was actually, I had not quite thought about that, but it was interesting to hear that as well.
Yeah, actually, the mayor of Toyotomi is expecting Agile Energy X to bring our solution not only to use the wasted gas, but also to lure young people to come to Toyotomi, because there's this interesting thing going on using our solutions. Kids or families who are fed up with the busy life in Tokyo, they will relocate to Toyotomi. Right now, there's not much industry, but we could help Toyotomi set up a new industry using wasted gas with Bitcoin mining and our ultimate circular economy. And it's interesting. It's fun for the kids. It's a good educational source for related to digital, environment, energy, finance, agriculture. So we can learn a lot through our solutions.
I know some of those small towns struggle with people leaving to the big city. Very cool. Well, I want to respect your time. Was there anything else that you wanted to hit on today?
So we as Energex, we're open to collaborating with people not only in Japan, around the world. So if there are possibilities for collaborating with other companies or organizations or schools in education or business or whatever, we'll be happy to do so. So everyone can reach out to me on LinkedIn at K Tateiwa. So it's my K and my last name Tateiwa. So looking forward to hearing many ideas how we can collaborate together to make the world a better place.
Absolutely. I will include those links. This has been a super fascinating conversation. I knew it would be exciting. You hit on a couple of things that I wasn't even expecting. So I really appreciate you carving out some time today.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me to your show, Makoto.
I look forward to following your work and look forward to talking again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.